My name is Marcel Flory. And I just wanted to wish you a Happy New Year. And we are going to have a lot of different sparkling wines. And we start with this beautiful wine from the Anderson Valley, made from Chardonnay grape, Pinot Noir and Pinot Meunier, in the Mendocino County. I don't know if you're familiar with California, but this is one of the coolest valley of California, from Champagne or wherever. I want to be, absolutely sure that I enjoy it. And with a wine like this, I say, yeah, I do enjoy it. And then after I look, is this a Champagne or does it come from, where does it come from? Well, it comes from Anderson Valley. That's pretty good too. So it is the first thing that I would say.
The home of the Japanese consulate. He was right here in Evanston, and they treated her to a fabulous meal. It's all sushi, and they have their own chef. And she went in the kitchen. He's showing her. There's a picture of him and his knives. He has one knife that costs $2,000.
Oh, this looks lovely. Thank you.
So anyway.
Oh my goodness, caviar.
But I can send you the post because the food is just beautiful.
I wanted to hear about the cute little crow again. Yeah. The little crow that could slide down the road.
You should watch the video. It's really adorable.
I know. They're smart. It's amazing. They actually can have fun.
From Champagne. And to tell you the truth, Becerra de Belfond doesn't have the notoriety, the fame that, I don't know, Bob Clicquot or Moët & Chandon, Dom Pérignon, Cristal, Krug, in Krug. Détinger, Bollinger, James Bond terrorist. But when you drink it, you feel like, maybe I should have bought something else, or maybe I should have paid the mortgage on my house before. You are kind of messed up with a lot of different ideas in your mind, which is not the goal of Champagne. When you drink Champagne, you should relax, you should enjoy. And you shouldn't think about the pricing. I shouldn't talk about the pricing. We should talk about the grapes. Okay, the grapes, the grape blend in there, in Becerra de Belfond. Let's see, 43% Pinot Noir, 42% Pinot Meunier, and 15% Chardonnay. If you add that up, you have 110 or 100%. Sometimes they do 100%, but I don't recommend it. So we test it together for nice fine bubbles, if that's important to you. I like the fine bubbles because when they are in my mouth, they tend to crush a little more nicely than the big bubbles in Pepsi Cola, for example. The big bubbles. So I'm kind of I'm kind of sensitive. I know for a man it's not really well regarded to be sensitive, but I mean, I'm not going to change my personality nowadays. I'm what I am, but I have to live with myself. At my age, I have to accept myself. Finally. So I tell you, no, I don't like too big of a bubble in the sparkling wine. I like when it caresses my heart. Excuse me, that's the way I am. That's what we have here with a pearl strong color. So what's the difference between the first one and this one?
Price.
Sweeter.
It has less taste. It is more elegant. It is a little more sophisticated. That's the way the French people describe their champagne. It is not as powerful in the mouth. It is leaner, it is more elegant. That's what they say. But it's still, you have dryness. Sweeter, I do not think so. All champagne have a high level of acidity. That's why, you know, when you drink champagne, please have something to eat, and that's what we're going to do. Please, you can bring the food. No, I'm done with my topic. That's a behind the scenes kind of line. We don't want to say that. But really, when you look at it, with that kind of champagne, like I say, it is a little leaner in the taste. You know, it is a little bit more sophisticated. You feel, you know, that really basically you have a taste there that lingers more because it's not as aggressive. That's the way I feel about this champagne. I mean, everybody has different opinion, maybe, but you know, still you have to recognize it is quite good. It is quite good. Let's go into that. It's quite good.
It's really good wine.
That's also champagne also. A lot less money. You say, well, this is not $3,000. Huh? You know, the test starts with the price tag. That's how you even for me, you know, it's difficult to fight against these little details. I mean, that's not a detail. I mean, it's a shock, you know. Sometimes $3,000 bottle, you prepare yourself. You're even shaking sometimes, you know, before you test it. And then when you test something at $15, you say, for you know. Yeah, it might not be good. It's like when I have a Prosecco, you know, I have a Prosecco, I love it, you know, but it's nothing, really. Or if in my wine class at Harper College, I defend the qualities of Lambrusco. Oh my God, is this guy for real or not, you know? And it's true, I defend the Lambrusco. I know that when I was in Italy, 1 year I had some Lambrusco. Well, I was a lot younger, but I really liked it. And then after I come here and I test Reunite.
Oh, dude.
I understand, you know, I understand. After that I'm like some sommeliers in New York, you know, I want to taste a good Lambrusco. I do want to taste a good Lambrusco. Like I do want to taste a good Beaujolais, or even just a good glass of any wine, by the way. But I mean, we are surrounded by such mediocrity in every you know, I mean, they mass produce those wines. They label it with a 92 wine spectator or something, you know, I just said, 92? My God, what is this? This is crap. It's a 92 piece of crap. No, so when I do something interesting in a wine like this, well, I'm not going to put a 92 on this. But I like, first of all, I like the color, yes. I like the nose. I like, it is a wine that is dry. It is just completely different. It is not as elegant. But let's test it together. Let's see. I want to hear. I mean, very nice, very nice. Not heavy, elegant too. With some wild berries, you know, and that's to me. You don't have to have 92. You don't have to be in Champagne. It is a great cava. Cava started in the first cava was made in 1851, and then this guy from Cordoniou, Joseph Ravento, went to France, to Champagne, to look at the Champagne wine, how they were making the Champagne wine, and he came back and he started to do the Cordoniou, the first cava, and he improved, in a way he improved it. In my opinion, it's an improvement when you can produce quality wine with a lot less money. And he was the one who started to do the Jarro palette, you know, where instead of riddling the wine, you know, because I met a guy, you know, from Pico that has been doing riddling for all his life, you know, and he was kind of, you know, he was kind of shaky, you know. But they used, they were very nice with him because when he finished riddling, he retired, they took him as a chauffeur, you know, for the Pico. Still in that action, you know. But I mean, he was very good. He was, no, but it's too, this is another story. But really, you have a wine here that is a lot less money than champagne, and it produces a lot of pleasure. And for your information, I always try to educate a little bit, you know. It's not my wife, she's upset when I try to. But I try to. This is, you know, it's not Pinot Noir, it's not Pinot Meunier, it's not Chardonnay, it's not Xarello, Parellada, Macabeu that is used in the cava. It is not that. It is Trepa. Trepa. It's an indigenous. Sometimes I get hard for my students. It's better because, you know, my accent is a little bit strong. And when some of my friends ask me, what do you do these days? I said, I teach a wine class at Harper College. They say, what? Harper. At the opera? Yes, at the opera. It's at the opera. But you see, I got a little bit of a problem with my son. But so I get like this. I get the help when I cannot pronounce something. I have someone help me, and it's fine. Indigenous grape from Conca de Barbera. I don't know if you know that. You know Burgundy, you know Bordeaux, you don't know Conca de Barbera? But what's wrong with you? Come on, guys. It's in the Catalonia. Catalonia. I don't know. Barcelona. No, that's Spanish? Come on.
Marcel is so great. It's so great.
Oh yeah, no, let's work it.
Well, you can see the crust there.
With Brittany, and we have a Spanish part of France with the Pays Basque, an Italian part of France with Savoie and the Alps. So we have everything in France, but we have a lot of influences, you know. We have been influenced by the Romans, by the Greeks, by the Phoenicians, by the Egyptians, by the... in terms of wine, because that's what I'm studying, you know, since I'm teaching it, I'm going to study it. And so you learn about the Phoenicians, the Romans, the Greek for sure. All these people, they drink wine, you know, and really, basically, the Romans, you know, when they came to Gaul, they found a few Gaul people that were trying to defend the country there, but they were not too organized. They were drinking too much cerveza, the beer, the French beer. But the Romans, when they came, they had you know, anybody in the army of the Romans would drink wine. They would drink wine before they go to war, you know. It's easier, you know. Hey, it's easier. You are going to. I remember when I was in the army, you know, I did 1 year. Because if you are not gay and if you are not sick, you have to go in the army. In my time, I wasn't gay, I wasn't sick, so I had to go. Not that I really liked it, but I had to go anyway. So, but I remember clearly that for lunch and dinner, not for breakfast, but for lunch and dinner, we had a glass of wine. Horrible, horrible. But you could drink. You drink, and then after they would also, to push the vice, you know, they would give you a ration of cigarettes, you know. So some people were smart, they would sell the cigarettes, you know, because you don't make that much money if you are just, you know, doing your military service, so you sell the cigarettes, you know. But all this to tell you, the Romans, when they came to to goal, they had to do their wine. So they went as far as Germany. Germany was a little bit cold at the time. You know, it was still a little bit cold because they didn't have the you know, the pollution that we had, the different kind of pollution at the time. It was falling, you know, right from the thing. It was not, you know, it was in the air also, but it was more like, it was not that bad, you know. I mean, you just walk past through it, you know, and you smell that, but it was not persistent, you know. You can, the pollution now, of course, gave way to the global warming. That's what I'm at now. Because in Germany it was kind of cold, and so you couldn't do too much with wine. You could do wines that were kind of acidic, only a few grapes would grow there, and it came later. The Romans had to carry everything with them when they went to Germany. But in Alsace, there are traces of the Romans establishing the vineyard there. They're now, you know, with history, the funny thing about history is you learn something one day, you know, and later on they're gonna revive that history. It's, you know, it's new knowledge. It's not only the Romans. Before the Romans, they were doing some vineyard there, and so that's Alsace. Alsace has traditionally been a little bit cold, and so you don't find too many red wines. But now it's starting in Alsace, in Austria, and in Germany. Since there is a global warming, it's more acceptable, and you can have some Pinot Noir and you can have some red wines there nowadays because of the warming up of the place. But what they do in Alsace to come to this, they have the Pinot Noir. The Pinot Noir from Alsace, you open it. Is that a red wine, really? Because it's absolutely not tannic. You know why it's not tannic? It's because it's not too sunny, it's not, they don't have too much heat. And the fact, you know, the berries, they develop a lot of skin, so if there is a lot of sun, to protect, you know, themselves from the sun. And so the more sun you have, the more tannic the wine is. That's why, you know, in those countries, the wines made with Pinot Noir or other grapes, they are not so tannic. They are a little bit light. And that's why the Pinot Noir in Alsace, when you put it in the ice bucket, because it's a very light tannin red wine, there is absolutely practically no, it just has the color, but no tannins. And so they say, bon, we have the white wine. They do excellent with the white wine. But they say now, you know, there is a segment of the wine market that we have to attack is the sparkling wine. And they do a good job with the Crémant, which is their sparkling wine. And the Crémant, I don't think they are in the same boat. You know, I would say they are comparable to Cavas, you know, in terms of quality. They are not exactly, not that I protect Champagne, you know, but Champagne has much better product. But I mean, they're starting to really be very, very aggressive on the market with their Crémant. And we have one Crémant today that is made 100% from Pinot Noir, 100%. And you know, to me, I don't see why not. You know, it's good. You know, you have an industry that is prosper, and it's great in Alsace. They have a lot of success with their white wine. They have been in the past very good with their wine knowledge and their wine qualities, and now they're doing a little bit of sparkling. Good for them. Especially since a lot of people look for sparkling wine. And it shouldn't be the monopoly of Champagne. Champagne should have a little bit of, you know, how to say, competition from every other country, so that they keep up the good work. That's how. Remain, you know, concentrate on the quality, because there are people coming, you know, by the back door that are going to be aggressive. We don't talk about the Chinese wine yet, huh? But it's coming. But I mean, you know, we still have a good product. Pinot Noir, 100%, Alsace, Crémant d'Alsace, Pierre Spar. And then with this beautiful wine, we have sweet cheese. I don't want to talk too much, but you know, I know you like when I talk. Then after you say, shut up, now sing. Yes, I do. But really, basically, I would like to say just a few words about the cheese. Michael telling me we have a bleu d'Auvergne. Everybody knows what a bleu d'Auvergne is. It's the other blue cheese from France. That's a very good quality blue cheese. I love the blue cheese. I love the Roquefort, but I love the bleu d'Auvergne. I love the Gorgonzola too. But I mean, and then after in California they do this Humboldt fog from the California. That is so beautiful blue cheese. And then we have the bleu d'Auvergne. We have the Florette, which is a goat brie. It's made in France too. And then we have a cheese that is not too far from where I used to live in the suburb of Paris-Saint-Cloud, Seine-et-Marne. It's a brie, you know, how to say, the rind, the white rind, you know, the blooming rind. Kind of cheese, triple cream, triple bypass, certainly. It's delicious with this wine. So yes, please bring the cheese. Yes. Thank you very much for your attention. I don't think it's going to make it. La mer, qu'on voit passer le long des grands clairs, à des reflets d'argent. La mer, des reflets changeants sous la pluie. La mer, au ciel d'été, confond ces blancs moutons avec des anges si purs. La mer, bergère d'azur infinie. Voyez, près des étangs, ces grands roseaux mouillés. Voyez, ces oiseaux blancs et ces maisons rouillées. La mer les a bercés le long des golfes clairs et d'une chanson d'amour. La mer a bercé mon cœur pour la vie. Voyez, près des étangs, ces grands roseaux mouillés. Voyez, ces oiseaux blancs et ces maisons rouillées. La mer les a bercés le long des golfes clairs et d'une chanson d'amour. La mer a bercé mon cœur pour la vie.
I come out and he's like lying on the bed like this. I don't know.
La mer, y a des petites fleurs, y a des petites fleurs, y a des corps enfin. Oh, au bois mon cœur, oh, au bois mon cœur. Quand y a plus de vin dans mon tonneau, quand y a plus de vin dans mon tonneau, ils n'ont pas peur de boire mon eau, de boire mon eau. La mer, y a des petites fleurs, y a des petites fleurs, y a des corps enfin.
Okay.
Il m'accompagne à la mairie. À la mairie, chaque fois que je me marie, Saint-Cloud, il y a des petits